3-7 absolute value equations. This is the last section of Chapter 3. Your test will be on Wednesday. Tomorrow is a practice test. To do absolute value, you have to understand what absolute value is. And these are absolute value brackets. That's not 1 minus 51 written poorly. Those are absolute value brackets. And whatever comes out of an absolute value bracket must become positive. Whatever that one term is, it must be positive. So the absolute value of negative 5 is positive 5. If I put a 5 in absolute value brackets, it comes back to be 5. Whatever's inside comes out to be positive. These brackets do not make it inverse. It is not switching the sign. You will never have a negative come out of an absolute value bracket. If I had absolute value of negative 6, what's the answer? 6. The absolute value of positive 6 would be what? 6. And if I had the absolute value of negative 2 minus 3, that does not mean I'm going to change each individual item in there into positives. What it means is I have to evaluate what this is. So negative 2 minus 3 is what? Nope. Negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is what? Positive 5. So here we go with another one. The absolute value of 6 minus a negative 2. What do I have to do first? Right, 6 minus a negative 2. What is 6 minus a negative 2? It is 8. Positive 8. Double negative changes to positive. The absolute value of 8 is what? 8. Absolute value of x equals 6. To solve this equation, I have to set it up as two different equations. The first one is exactly how it appears, except without the absolute value brackets. It's just x equals 6. And that just so happens to be your first answer. There's nothing more to do to that. But the second equation is set up like this. You put a negative sign in front of the x and set it equal to 6. And then you solve that one. 6 divided by negative 1 is negative 6. Absolute value of x equals 8. Set it up first as x equals 8. And then set it up as negative x equals 8. You're finished with this because x equals 8, nothing else can be done to it. But on this side, on the right, you're going to have to divide that x, or divide the 8 by the negative 1 that's with the x, and come up with a negative 8 for the answer. Check your answers. Notice that when you put 8 in here, absolute value of 8 is 8. And if I put a negative 8 in there, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. So it works out. In this problem, we have the absolute value of x equals a negative 6. Anytime you have the absolute value of something equal to a negative, the answer is the empty set, or no solution, because anything that comes out of this is not going to be negative. If I put a 6 in here, what's the absolute value of 6? 6. What's the absolute value of negative 6? 6. So there's nothing I can put in here that is going to make that have a negative answer. So you're just finished with that. A common mistake on this is to go ahead and try to work it out and come up with two different answers. And you might have 6 or negative 6. There we go. You could have 6 or negative 6, but that's not going to be right. The answer is nothing, empty set. Alright, let's say we have the absolute value of x minus 3 equals 2. Before you can do anything about setting up two different equations, you must get the absolute value brackets by themselves. To do that, you're going to have to move the plus 3 to the right, or the minus 3 to the right and make it plus 3. So then you come up with absolute value of x equals 5. And from that point, you can set up two different equations. You'll have x equals 5, which is finished, and then you'll have negative x equals 5. And for the right side, you would divide the 5 by the negative 1 and come up with a negative 5. You're going to have to move this minus 4 to the right to come up with a plus 4. And when you do that, you get a negative 2 on the right. The answer to this is the empty set. No absolute value can come out to be negative. Here it is. We have to get this plus 5 over to the right side and make it minus 5. So absolute value of x equals 5. Now on the next page, we'll go ahead and finish solving that. Absolute value of x equals 5. That means you write x equals 5, which is finished, and then negative x equals 5. Divide the 5 by the negative 1 and come up with a negative 5. Your next problem is the absolute value of x minus 1. Close the absolute value, plus 2 equals 10. You have an expression in the absolute value, but you still solve it the same way. Your first step is to move that plus 2 over to the right side and be left with x minus 1 absolute value on the left, and on the right 10 minus 2. Of course, 10 minus 2 is going to be 8. So now you have to solve this absolute value equation by doing two different equations. The first one is going to be the way it looks, and then you solve it from there. The second one is going to be something that I'll show you on the next screen. I can't move this page around like I did with the old app, so I have to use a different page. So here's where we left off. We had the absolute value of x minus 1 equals 8. So write x minus 1 equals 8 here, and you're going to have to solve that. As well as, remember in the last type we put a negative sign in front of the x. This time we have x minus 1. You put that in parentheses with a negative sign in front of it. That's the only difference. Then you solve both of these equations. On the left, that's x equals 8 plus 1, which is going to give you a 9. On the right-hand side, you have to understand what to do with this negative sign. A negative quantity means you multiply each item inside the parentheses by that negative sign. That's a negative 1 to the left of the parentheses. This is a negative 1. Negative 1 times x is negative x. And then, I have to go over that in red. There we go. And negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. In other words, it changes the signs of everything inside. The 8 stays the same. And you solve that negative x plus 1 equals 8 for x. So move the plus 1 to the right, make it minus 1. 8 minus 1 is 7. So divide 7 by -1 to come up with x equals -7. The problem is the absolute value of x plus 3, close the absolute value minus 1, equals 6. You have to get this into a form where it is the absolute value that's by itself. So we're going to move that minus 1 to the right and make it plus 1. That gives us a 7 on the right. Now with that, we're going to have to break that up into two different equations that we have to solve. I'll do the first one over here on the bottom left. That's x plus 3 equals 7. It's the same thing that's written, except you don't put the absolute value brackets in. Over here on this side, you're going to do the negative quantity of x plus 3 and set that equal to 7. We have to solve both of these. This one is easy. Move the 3 over and make it minus. Your answer is 4. On the right-hand side, that negative sign changes everything inside the parentheses. So you now have negative x minus 3 equals 7. And you can solve that. Move the negative 3 to the right, make it plus 3. That will give you a positive 10 that you divide by the negative 1 that's next to the x. 4 and negative 10 are the answers.